Now, guys, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by multiple winner on the Ladies European Tour, Megan MacLaren. Megan, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, guys.
So it's a big week here at Irish Open. This is pretty much a home game for you. This is, from what I hear, there's a fair bit of Irish heritage.
I've got a lot of Irish blood, yeah. Which has come in very handy with the passport situation. Ireland's always felt a little bit like, definitely a little bit like home.
That's good. So your mum plays Irish internationals, grew up in Portrush, and for your dad now he's GM of Port Stewart. I imagine with a 1-2 punch like that, people are probably calling them up for rounds of golf here or there every so often.
Yeah, we played at Galgorm 2 weeks ago, so there was quite a lot of players and caddies like, oh, do you reckon your dad can get me on? Or so yeah, there was a few rounds of golf being played there.
Did you get to, when you go back to Northern Ireland, do you get to play the golf courses over there much?
A little bit. I did more so whenever I was younger.
Yeah.
Obviously, since I turned pro, it's hard to find any free time.
Yeah,
but when my mum and dad moved back over here, I think we went over in like March maybe this year, and we were like, okay, we have to have a game at Port Stewart because we're there. And honest to God, I could barely stand up on the first tee. It was so windy. And it's like, it has its pluses and its minuses, links golf.
I can imagine. So, week of the Women's Irish Open this week. How's this season been going for you?
Not great, to be honest. It's been a bit of a rough year, but I've worked really hard on a few things, and I feel, it's maybe a bit cliche, but I feel really good about a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. It's just kind of waiting for it all to come together in a tournament. But there's been some good signs lately, and it's kind of a bit of a long-term process. Sure. So it's one of those.
A couple of close calls though at the same time. What are 2 playoffs this year that didn't
last year, yeah. Playoffs are rough, but
I can imagine.
But yeah, there was some, there's been some good moments over the past 18 months. Definitely, it's just we're all after that little bit more consistency.
And is there anything specifically that you're working on this year?
Well, I changed coach in about March time, so I've been working hard on just tightening my swing up a little bit, and not kind of big changes, but any kind of change in golf when you put it under the gun in tournament is hard to kind of really trust it under pressure. So it's kind of just been that
especially
process.
Kind of mid-season as well, just to try and work on that as well as your game stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was, like I said, it's not big changes necessarily, but you kind of don't realize until you get into tournaments again that that any kind of change does take time. And we had quite a big break in March or April, so there was quite a bit of time for me to really work hard on the technical stuff. But again, as soon as you get back into tournament mode, it's just like, okay, what am I trying to do here, Yeah.
So how are you feeling going into this week? Well, you played her before, you played her last year.
Mm-hmm.
How's the game?
It's good. I feel as good as I have done all year, to be honest. And this was a really good tournament last year. It was, first time back for quite a number of years, I think, for the Irish Open, and the number of people that came out, it just has that big tournament feel, which as players is a really cool thing to be a part of.
You had a lot of people following your group as well last year as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I played with Leona on the Saturday, I think it was, and I played really well, and she played great as well. So it's just, that's kind of what you play for. We don't always get the crowds, and sometimes, especially on like a Thursday, Friday, it feels like nobody knows that you're playing a tournament,
Sure.
But it is that adrenaline and, hearing the cheers when you hit a good shot and stuff. That's what it's all about,
so
really.
Does the crowd kind of give you energy? Does it buzz you, or do you feel a little bit more intimidated when there's those big crowds?
I think it can go both ways. Like it honestly just depends how you're playing. Like if you're feeling good, that energy is unbelievable. Like it's really, you start to understand why players can elevate their games in the big tournaments or in like Ryder Cup, Solheim Cup. But yeah, if you're struggling or having a bad day, it's kind of like, okay, there's nowhere to hide, and you really want to, but that's all part of it.
So you've been on site now for a couple of days, got a couple of practice rounds into you. There've been some small changes to the golf course, a couple of tee boxes, bunkers added in. How's it playing? It seems like it's a little soft in places, just because the amount of rain we've had. So that means it's playing quite long.
It is. There's a few long holes out there. Maybe we'll get a few tees knocked forward a little bit come tournament, but I think the thing I found here last year as well is it has such a good mix of holes that, yeah, you might have a couple of holes where you're coming in with rescue or 4-iron, but then you've got a reachable par 5 or you've got a reachable par 4, and I think that balance makes for quite an exciting tournament.
The feedback that we've been getting from a number of players is the opening stretch of like 1 to 5 is quite tough, but then after there there are scoreable opportunities. Would you kind of subscribe to that, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's bang on really. First is quite a tough hole, and then you've got, I think it's 4 and 5 are back to back quite long holes, and they've been playing into the wind the last couple of days, so you've just, there's definitely holes where it's like, okay, par is a good score, and then you try and take your chances when they kind of come up a bit later in the round.
What would those holes be when you're trying to take those chances?
I think 6 is reachable par 5 if you get a good drive, and then that kind of end stretch, I think 15, 16 and 18 are kind of, it depends how the conditions make it play, but there's definitely a few out there with the par 5s.
How aggressive are you going to be on 18 in terms of taking on
With
that
all
water?
that water on the
That's
right.
the question,
big question.
isn't
I've hit
it?
a lot of balls into that water.
That's not really what I want to hear right now.
I lay a massive slice. That's my problem.
Yeah,
So
he's an 18 handicap. Don't take any
17.
advice from him.
17 point what?
5.
So 18.
Yeah,
Don't take any advice from him.
Yeah, it all just depends on the day, honestly. Like, depends on the tee shot you hit, and I think they changed the tee a couple of times last year, so you just have to pay attention, and sometimes there's an opportunity there that you're not expecting, and you have to kind of stand up and hit the golf shot, which is how it should be, I think.
And so you were saying that obviously on Saturday last year you played very well. You put yourself into the mix in terms of one of the groups, one of the players to look out for. Obviously that's where you want to be again, but what's that like on a Sunday, coming into contention? Obviously you haven't gotten across the line a number of times. Having that feeling, like, for those of us that just will never know that feeling, explain it for us.
It's strange because I think when you're in it, you're nervous, and there might be, fear's not the right word, but there's definitely like an apprehension sometimes of, am I going to play well? Because at the end of the day, you can have the right mindset, the right attitude and stuff, but if your game's just not quite there, that's when it's a difficult position to be in.
Sure.
But the majority of the time, if you've got yourself into contention, then you're doing something right. But I think for me, especially last year, because I was very up and down last year, so when I got into those moments of being into contention, it was kind of a little bit surreal, because 1 week you're struggling, and the next week you're like, I don't really know what's different, but all of a sudden I've got a chance.
Feels easier.
Yeah, I've got a chance to win a tournament. And again, at the end of the day, that's what you play for. Like, it's hard, like, especially last 9 holes in a situation like that. You can kind of see it, you're close enough to know what it feels like, but one mistake here or there can be the difference between winning and losing. And losing in playoffs is like one of the hardest feelings that I've experienced, but at the same time I would swap what's happened this year for one moment like that, you know. So I think they can be difficult to swallow sometimes when you get close to winning and you don't, but at the same time when you miss cuts, it's like you would kill for that feeling. So you've got to, I think sometimes you have to be in those moments to know that that's what you want. That makes sense.
You're quite big in mindset. Like, I know you have kind of blogs and stuff. And is it something that you would work a lot on?
Yeah, it is. I think I've been lucky early in my career when I've got into those moments. I feel comfortable, or comfortable is maybe not the right word, but I feel like I can handle them.
You feel feeling uncomfortable.
Exactly.
In a weird way.
That's exactly the right way to describe it. And I think if you're not okay with that feeling, then you're doing, you shouldn't be playing professional sport. Like, it's supposed to be uncomfortable. And
probably addicting. It's kind of addictive to try and get into that place. Because,
when you can come 40th every week, or you can miss cuts by a couple of shots every week, and that's when there's no excitement there. Like, it's very hard to recreate that adrenaline that you get from being in contention, having a chance to win. That's, at the end of the day, that's what professional sport's about. And yeah, I think for me, that's I've, I guess, had that feeling enough times to use that as motivation. So even this year when things have been a bit more difficult, you know, I know it's never that far away, and that's why on any given week things can change for you.
You spoke about big moments. There's a very, very big tournament coming up, the Solheim Cup. Having spoken to players like Callan Headwell and Leona, a couple of players that are in the field here. How much is that an ambition for you as a player? There must be, obviously, as a European, there must be it. Like.
Yeah, it is. I think whenever I first turned pro, I remember watching whatever one that was and being like, that was the first time that it felt real, that it was like, okay, I've turned professional now. I know some of these players who are playing.
Yeah.
This is something that I can do, you know, and it goes from when you're an amateur, it's like, okay, that's the pinnacle of the sport, but it feels very far away.
Sure.
And then as soon as I turned professional, I was like, okay, I want that really, really badly. And again, like, I know a lot of the girls now who are on the team and have thrived in those situations, and girls who I grew up playing amateur golf with. So it absolutely is something that I'd love to experience one day.
I say that all kind of adds into the motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. I was, I think it was 2019. I wasn't a million miles away from that team, and had a couple of chats with Katrina Matthew that year, and kind of got to try on some of the uniform and stuff. And again, I ended up, I think, a long way away from making the team.
Okay.
But there was like little moments throughout the year where it was a real possibility, and just even getting that tiny taste of it is like, okay, that's what it's all about.
Is that bittersweet?
A little bit, but the year kind of, it faded quite badly for me, kind of like in, I guess, May time. So the stretch right before it really mattered. So I knew I was quite a long way outside it. Sure. But I think the first couple of months of that year, it was like, okay, people are asking me about it. People are mentioning it in interviews. Like, it can come along quite quickly whenever your game just clicks at the right time.
Yeah. You had one last thing.
Well,
as our resident football fan,
the fact you're wearing black and white, and the fact it's in your Instagram bio, you must be delighted that Newcastle are in the Champions League, and it must have been gutting though losing to Liverpool last. I know,
Saturday. Yeah, it's not the best time to ask me about it, because I was at the match at the weekend. And
were you?
Yeah, I was.
Do you know what I found watching it? I feel it's going to be one of those games that are showed on Sky in 20 years. Where were you when
exactly
that
just
happened?
like Kevin Keegan slumped over the advertising boards. It's
it's we will love it. It's going to be one of those.
It's funny because it's like last season was like just the most surreal experience being a Newcastle fan, because
the last one was 97 when they were challenging United. Really, is when they
which I was too young to sort of know what was happening then, but my like memory growing up was Bobby Robson in charge, so like Champions League nights, and to have that back again is after what it's been like the last 10 years.
And are you a big Eddie Howe fan?
Yeah, I love him.
Have you listened to his podcast on the mental side of the game, the performance
the
stuff?
one with Jake Humphrey. Yeah. Honestly, I like. Okay, well, I'm like geeking out quite a lot now, but I like listen to his like interviews midweek and stuff. Yeah. And I actually think it's fascinating as like a professional athlete listening to how he approaches things, because all of the things that I would like my mindset to be, he seems to just have ingrained in himself and in, you know, what he's obviously trying to implement in the football team. So it is really interesting listening to him and his kind of, just his attitude really, just like how you bounce back from kind of defeats or from low points and not letting the emotions kind of cloud what you do next.
Okay, so the big, where are Newcastle going to finish?
Oof,
in the league.
Early to be saying that.
Early. Yeah. I think we'll get fourth again. Yeah.
And will we pick up a trophy? Or go far in the Champions League? Which would you rather? Would you rather them to win a Carling Cup and FA Cup, or go far in the Champions League?
I went to the cup final last season as well, and I You can't ask me questions like that. No comment.
Not on a Tuesday.
Ask her anything about golf. It doesn't matter, but just don't go. Don't pull on the heartstrings in football.
It's too much.
Fair enough. Well, we'll come back to you for an answer then later on in the season.
Yeah, we'll get you back on with Newcastle.
Yeah.
If Newcastle
if we
win,
beat Brighton at the weekend, you can ask me again.
Yeah, you can be our football correspondent for Newcastle. If
right,
any of the big results happen.
I'm in for that.
Sounds good. Listen, thank you so much for the chat. We appreciate it, and good luck this week.
Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.